Welcome to another episode of True Shills. In the heart of nature's secrets, where reality bends and wilderness whispers, we journey into the unknown. Brace yourselves for tales that defy explanation, told by those who guard the wild. Are you ready to explore the mysteries that dwell within our national parks? Yellowstone National Park is a truly breathtaking place, but like any other place, it can have its eerie moments. As a park ranger, I've had my fair share of remarkable experiences over the years, but one particular encounter still sends shivers down my spine. It happened one night while I was out on patrol. In the distance, I spotted an unusual light that piqued my curiosity. At first, I thought it might be a campfire, judging by the color and appearance. But as I drew closer, it became apparent that something peculiar was afoot. The light emanated from a small adobe house perched on the side of a cliff. It flickered like a candle, but emitted a much brighter glow than any candle could produce, especially from that distance. Naturally, I approached the house with caution, but no matter how close I got, I couldn't see what was inside. After a while, I gave up and returned to my duties. The following day, I went back to the same spot, this time with a colleague, to investigate further. To our astonishment, the house had vanished. In its place, we found only boulders, sand, and overgrown weeds. Both my colleague and I were left utterly baffled by this strange disappearance. Interestingly, my colleague had also witnessed the same inexplicable phenomenon from his vantage point. Years later, I had a conversation with another ranger who had spent his entire life in the area. He shared with me a local legend of what he called the witch house that would occasionally materialize within Yellowstone. According to him, the area where I had seen the adobe house was notorious for being a gathering spot for witches. He had heard tales of people spotting the house lit up at night, suggesting that dark magic rituals took place within. However, the house was so inconspicuous that it was nearly impossible to detect during the day, unless you were in precisely the right location. I still can't fully comprehend what I witnessed that night, but the memory of that experience remains etched in my mind. Even today, when I think about the supposed witch house in Yellowstone, it sends a shiver down my spine. Being a ranger in Yellowstone, or a former one like myself, means hearing and sharing countless stories and legends with fellow colleagues and rangers who have dedicated years to this park. Exchanging stories is a common practice among us. One of the most intriguing and unusual tales I've encountered involves the existence of large, wolf-like creatures said to roam the remote backcountry of Yellowstone. Now, before you start feeling uneasy, let me clarify. According to some veteran rangers, these creatures are not your ordinary wolves. They are bipedal, standing upright on two legs, much larger and more aggressive than any typical wolf. Descriptions often include long, shaggy fur and eyes that seem to emit an eerie glow, illuminating the darkness around them. Some of the stories even suggest that these creatures possess an intelligence that rivals that of humans. There are even claims that they might be shapeshifters, capable of taking on both human and animal forms. Over the years, there have been numerous reports of these creatures being sighted in the remote wilderness and occasionally near campsites. These encounters usually happen in the most isolated and desolate areas, far from where most tourists venture. The accounts I've come across generally describe these creatures as astonishingly fast and agile, displaying a strength and agility that defies logical explanation. In fact, some stories go so far as to propose that these creatures might be responsible for attacks on animals, and, in rare instances, even humans within the park, including reports of missing persons. However, it's essential to remember that these are merely theories and that there is little concrete evidence to support the existence of such a mysterious creature, let alone photographic or video evidence. Now, some of us rangers believe that these stories are merely the product of folklore and legend. There's a belief that sometimes our fears and imagination can give rise to such tales. On the other hand, there are those who maintain that these creatures might indeed exist, remaining elusive and unseen. Regardless of their origins, these stories contribute to the mystique and fascination that many visitors experience at Yellowstone. And speaking of creepy encounters, I once heard a particularly unsettling tale from a fellow retired ranger who had spent years working in Yellowstone. This story unfolded deep in the backcountry, not far from Old Faithful. The ranger, with 2 decades of experience under her belt, recounted an eerie summer night on patrol. She stumbled upon a group of tourists huddled together, visibly shaken and as pale as ghosts. They claimed to have witnessed something in the woods that defied explanation. Initially skeptical but curious, the ranger armed herself with a flashlight and ventured into the woods to investigate. As she delved deeper into the forest, an unsettling sound filled the air, a guttural, growling noise that seemed to emanate from all around her. Her heart pounded as she realized she was surrounded by a pack of massive wolves. However, these creatures were like no ordinary wolves she had ever encountered. They stood on 2 legs, twice the size of regular wolves, with eyes that emitted an eerie, menacing glow. Their growls grew louder and more threatening as they closed in on her. She prepared to draw her weapon, when, in a moment of sheer disbelief, these beings seemed to vanish into thin air. It was as if they evaporated into a thick, wispy mist right before her eyes. Shaken and bewildered, the ranger made her way back to the tourists who confirmed that they had witnessed the same inexplicable creatures. The retired ranger, whose name I'll withhold out of respect for her privacy, never let go of that strange encounter. She shared her story with several of us, revealing that she had heard similar accounts from fellow rangers over the years. These stories stretched back through many generations, making her believe that these wolf-like creatures were something beyond the ordinary, perhaps even supernatural beings that roamed the wilds of Yellowstone. Despite her credibility and the consistency of her story, the National Park Service has never officially acknowledged the existence of these enigmatic cryptids. But for those of us who have worked within the park's boundaries, or in national parks in general, these tales of supernatural beings lurking in Yellowstone's backcountry serve as a reminder of the untamed and mystical spirit that still dwells within these lands. I've also encountered numerous stories from diverse sources and different cultures about supernatural creatures and magic. Personally, I identify as an atheist and don't subscribe to beliefs like skinwalkers or black magic. However, when it comes to indigenous tribes and their traditions, I strive to keep an open mind. There may be connections between Navajo culture and the concept of shape-shifting and skinwalkers. I've had the opportunity to converse with elders and spiritual leaders of local tribes, and they assert that shapeshifters and practitioners of magic are indeed real. According to them, the malevolent ones possess the power not only to influence people's minds, but also to curse them and transform into various animals, including wolves. Additionally, there are stories about how these skinwalkers, loosely defined as black magic practitioners with the ability to maliciously shapeshift, can place curses on individuals. Some of my colleagues, who are more open-minded than I am, claim to have encountered these strange, large, wolf-like creatures in the backcountry areas. Nevertheless, my primary responsibility is to ensure the safety of visitors and provide them with information about the park and its rich history, even if it occasionally veers into the realm of the eerie. I always encourage people to keep an open mind and respect the beliefs and cultures of the local communities, even if they differ from our own. My enduring message to everyone is always about safety. I emphasize the importance of never venturing into the backcountry or straying from the designated trails without proper equipment and a thorough understanding of the area. Thank you so much for allowing me to share these experiences with you. I hope you are well, and that these stories have left you with a sense of wonder. Now, our next story comes from Ted, a park ranger who served at Monument Valley National Park in the 1980s. Ted had this to say about his time as a park ranger. In the Monument Valley National Park during the 1980s, I had the privilege of bearing witness to the awe-inspiring beauty of the valley nearly every day. While at the park, I was continually captivated by the unique geological formations that adorned the stark landscape. Each formation stood as a testament to the incredible natural forces that had sculpted this magnificent land. One evening, as I made my rounds, I was drawn to the eerie silence that enveloped the valley after the sun had set. It was as if the valley had fallen into a deep, tranquil sleep. Curiosity led me to take a stroll along the ridgeline, which afforded a breathtaking view of the valley. I cherished the serenity of the night. As I walked, I noticed a strange, flickering light in the distance, a light that appeared to be dancing. Its movement was peculiar, and I couldn't discern its source. Driven by curiosity, I decided to investigate and make my way toward the mysterious light. As I approached, I realized that the light wasn't emanating from a single point, but seemed to envelop the entire valley. To my astonishment, the entire valley was bathed in an ethereal glow, as if it were illuminated from within. It was then I surmised that what I was witnessing was a phenomenon known as earth lights, an electrical discharge from the ground caused by the interaction of subterranean rock strata. It was a rare and fascinating sight, and I felt truly privileged to be a witness. I remained in the valley for several hours, studying the earth lights and observing their intricate movements. As the night progressed, the valley gradually returned to its customary darkness, and the earth lights vanished, leaving no trace as if they had never graced us with their presence. To this day, this incredible memory remains with me. This particular night remains one of the most peculiar and unforgettable in my entire career. The experience only deepened my belief that the natural world conceals numerous mysteries and wonders waiting to be unveiled. I've personally come to believe that some of these mysteries intersect with the supernatural. Allow me to recount another eerie incident that occurred during this same time frame. It was a crisp winter night, and I was on patrol, making my rounds through the park. On this night, I was lured by a sound, an eerie, almost human-like howling echoing from the direction of the spires. It was a sound I had never encountered before, even during my years working around the park. Driven by curiosity, I decided to explore further, my flashlight guiding me along the path. As I drew nearer, the howls grew more frequent and intense. Caution was paramount, as the park housed various flora, fauna, and wildlife species that could pose a threat if approached recklessly. Suddenly, I spotted a shadowy figure moving among the spires. I directed my flashlight toward it, and what I witnessed continues to haunt me to this day. It was a wolf, but not any ordinary wolf I had ever seen. It was colossal, its fur shimmering under the moonlight. Its eyes glowed with a brilliant ruby-red hue, and its posture seemed almost human-like. Before you dismiss my account, please understand that I stood there, utterly transfixed, as this creature regarded me with an expression that appeared eerily human. I was too paralyzed by fear to move and too terrified to continue my investigation. Instead, I fled back to my patrol car, reporting my bizarre sighting to my superiors. Thankfully, whatever entity it was, it didn't pursue me. To this day, I remain haunted by the question of what I truly encountered that night in Monument Valley National Park. However, I must admit that my superiors swiftly dismissed my account and advised me against openly discussing it. To be honest, I rarely talk about it because the experience was deeply unsettling, and revisiting it brings back a sense of dread. Our final story comes from an ex-search and rescue personnel who worked in and around Yosemite National Park. Yosemite is known for its rugged and breathtaking terrain, and we've encountered a wide range of emergencies, from lost hikers to injured climbers. But today, I'm sharing a set of bizarre stories that I've kept to myself for years. Most people would likely think I'm crazy if I shared these tales, but it seems like the right time to share them with you. One day, we received a distress call about a missing hiker in the park. The hiker was an elderly man who had embarked on a solo hike despite stern warnings from fellow park rangers. At that time, the weather conditions were harsh, with heavy rain and fierce winds battering the mountains. Sadly, he had chosen to continue his journey and had become another statistic. In fact, he claimed they chased him for miles and miles, nearly taking his life, until he found refuge in a tiny valley. Despite the challenging terrain and harsh weather, he managed to stay safe. To my knowledge, there's no documented group of wild, hairy men residing around Yosemite Valley. However, his earnestness and lack of any apparent reason to deceive left me intrigued. Now, let me share another story from my time in search and rescue. This particular night, what I witnessed was entirely different from any previous encounter. It wasn't a bear, and it wasn't anything I could have ever imagined. The way it moved, the way it effortlessly kept pace with my truck, it was like nothing I had ever envisioned. This experience made me start paying closer attention to my surroundings. I began noticing peculiar signs in the forest, like uprooted saplings, tree trunks, and roots arranged in intricate patterns with stones. At times, I felt an eerie sensation of being watched, of never truly being alone. I always carried a loaded 9mm pistol with me during my wilderness excursions, and so far, it had kept me safe. But you just never know. This isn't exactly a story. It's more of an ongoing experience. Fast forward a couple of years, and I found myself on a treacherous search and rescue mission. We had received a distress signal from a group of hikers who had gone missing within Yellowstone National Park. As we navigated through a densely forested area, I couldn't shake a strange feeling, as though I had encountered this scenario before. It was like an uncanny sense of déjà vu. And then it hit me. The forest and my surroundings had transformed dramatically. The vegetation grew denser, the sky darkened, and an unexpected sight unfolded before us. We stumbled upon a small, seemingly medieval-style village, completely out of sync with modern civilization. The villagers wore traditional clothing from what appeared to be around the year 1500, and they were in the midst of a celebration. Surprisingly, or perhaps alarmingly, they didn't notice us. I couldn't help but question whether we had somehow stepped back in time. We attempted to retrace our steps to return to our starting point, all the while bewildered by the inexplicable experience. Fortunately, we made it back, seemingly to our own time. But I can't help but wonder if we had inadvertently crossed through some kind of portal, though I struggle to find the words to describe it accurately. I've always refrained from sharing this story with many people because it often leaves me questioning my own sanity. Did I hallucinate or fabricate the experience? However, I remember that all three of us who were there experienced the same phenomenon. It was a shared encounter with matching details. While this may sound incredibly science fiction, it's an experience that has made me contemplate the unexplainable. As for the missing hikers who sent the distress signal, they were eventually located about 3 days later. However, the inexplicable time portal we encountered remains a mystery with no rational explanation. As we conclude our journey through the enigmatic world of national parks, remember that mysteries persist in the wild. These stories remind us of the untamed beauty that surrounds us. If you've been enthralled by these tales, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to spread the wonder of the wild. Join us in exploring the uncharted and uncovering nature's deepest secrets. Until next time, embrace the mysteries of our national parks and keep the spirit of adventure alive.